This is the second video in the How to Use SAS playlist. Today I'm going to be talking about reading in data from a file and the different ways of doing it. This first file I had in the first video. And you notice here the data is in stream in the code. And if we go to the libraries and we go to work, we'll see that data set. The first new thing I want to show you is reading in data from a file, and this file is up here. I'm going to go down to open with notepad so you can see. This is how this file is basically set up. You have one variable, a comma, second variable, a comma, then a third variable. So every variable is separated by a comma, and that is called comma separated values. So you may see some files that have the .csv, and most likely they're going to look something like this. Now, to read in that file, I'm going to need to know the location. So if I click up here, then I can get the location, and I'll copy and paste it down here. And I also need to add the file name, which is patience.csv. Now around that, I'm going to write my data step. Now you'll notice every data step starts with the name of the data. So data patience1. I could name that whatever I wanted. I just chose an arbitrary name. The end file statement always goes up towards the top of the data step because you're going to have to do that first, as opposed to the data line statement up here. This is the location on the computer where the file is stored. And DSD stands for delimiter sensitive data. And that's up there in green where you see number 1, delimiter sensitive data. That just means it has some separator in between the variables. For instance, a comma, or it could be a space or an asterisk or anything. The default for DSD is a comma. DLM is where I could put a different delimiter if that file happened to have a different delimiter. The input statement has IDs being read in as a number, gender, you see the $, so you know that's being read in as a character variable, M or F, and then age is being read in as a number. Now I'm going to highlight just this section and click run up here. And you'll notice I'm already in the work library, and you see patience1 comes up. Now one thing you could do is you could double click this to see if something is in it. So it looks like that worked. And also always make sure you check your log to see if anything is suspect. And another thing you could do is run a proc print procedure. And here you see the same data set displayed in the output window. Now let me show you a different type of file. If you look at this file, it's a .dat. When I open it and look at it, you notice that there is no comma separator. So there's a different way of reading in this type of file. And this is actually an easier one to read in, where it just lined up perfectly in columns. So what I'm going to do is copy that first couple of lines of code. I'm just going to change it a little bit so I can see the difference. I'm going to give it a new name. I could name it whatever I want, but I'm just going to name it patience2. Like I said, I don't need these options for that file. Now that file name, if we look at it, is patience.dat. So I have to change that here. And I have the same variables. It's basically the same data, just stored a different way. I'm gonna, in my print procedure this time, I'm gonna look for patience2 instead of patience1. Right, you'll notice the second page is up here, and this is the same data. It's in a different location on the data set. So if I were to look in my Explorer window, I have patience1 that was read in from the .csv file and patience2 that was read in from the .dat file. The next thing I'm going to do is talk about when you're bringing in data that has a date format. And with a date format, SAS reads it in as a number, starting with 0 for January 1st, 1960. And then it goes up a day, it goes up by 1 each day after that. If it's a date before 1960, it reads it as a negative number. And you have to be careful if you're ever dealing with historical data, because it can be accurate back to 1592 AD. I'll talk about the colon modifier in a moment. The data we're going to use here is areabirth. Areabirth.csv. If I open with Notepad, you can see here that this seems to be a comma separated values, a data set or file, and it has last name comma, some number comma, and then the date. Now the date is a tricky thing to read in. You'll notice here in the input statement that I use a colon modifier, and you can read about that up here, but a colon modifier allows you to be able to read in the dates without occurring an error. The line below that, I have an asterisk before the statement, and that makes it a comment, and it's not going to be read in or executed. So we can see what happens. You'll notice I put a space here. I need that to be, I can't have any spaces in my data set name. So I'm going to take that space out. Now when we run this, let's go back and look at the file. Notice here the date, January 1st, 1960. Like I said, that should show up 0. And we have other dates, January 1st, 1961, December 31st, 1959. Think about what numbers would show up for those dates. Before I run the program, one last thing I got to do is put the actual file location. So we go back to our folder. Here is a location, and the name of the data. The name of the file is areabirth.csv. And also we're going to have to put in the DSV so the program knows that it is a delimiter sensitive file. And I'm going to put the DLM, the delimiter, is a comma. Notice the date. January 1st, 1960 is a 0. The day before that, December 31st, 1959 is a -1, and then January 1st, 1961, yes, 1961 is 366, which means that year must have been a leap year. Of course, you don't want to see your dates like that, because that only makes sense to the computer. If any other date like this 9587, we're not gonna know what date that is. So the way we get around that is we put in a format line, and the format is going to put it in a way we can read it. And now you'll notice the date comes up, and January 1st, 1960 is 1/160. Now there's more things with dates that you have to know when you really get to working with SAS. Like for instance, would 60 be 1960, or would it be 2060? Or if you can think of something like 20. If you had a 20 here, would we be talking about 1920, or would we be talking about 2020? And that I'm not going to get into in this video. I might get into it later. The last thing I'm going to show you is doing the opposite, taking a data set that's in SAS and writing it to a file. So the second line, the set records, well, the top line, null, whenever you use null, that's when you're not creating a new data set, but you have to use a data step. So there's no data set being created here. The set statement is going to set the file equal to work.records. And if you remember at the beginning of the video, that is what I read in. The file statement is going to tell the computer where to put the file. And I can use the delimiter as we were using it before when we were reading in data, and say that I want a comma in between the two, and say that I want a comma in between the two variables. Now when I run this, where I'm going to look after I look in the log, is I'm going to look for that data set, that data as a file. Now I made a little mistake here. I need to go back and I need to put in .csv so that file doesn't look so awkward. So now I have two files. This one I created, and it's kind of a weird file. The computer wouldn't know how to open it. This one, I go to open with Notepad. I have that same data from the beginning of the video, and now I have it as a .csv file, which is good because I can take it to other programs. So that's how you may export and import things from SAS into different programs like SPSS or even Excel. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the playlist that I'm creating. And if you like it, click like and subscribe.